We briefly touched on the mechanical axis in the last video. I want to go into it a little bit more depth now. The mechanical axis isn't the axis of rotation. It can be, and it can coincide, but it isn't necessarily, and is usually not. What the mechanical axis is a concept of the bone when all of the bobs and nubs and calluses and everything else has been removed, and you simply have a line representing that bone. So the red lines on this picture represent mechanical axes of the shoulder, the humerus at the shoulder and the humerus at the elbow. The mechanical axis is a line that is perpendicular to the average plane of the joint surfaces. So what you can see in this picture is that it runs through the neck of the humerus at the shoulder and runs through the shaft of the humerus at the elbow. Both of these mechanical axes, the humerus therefore has two mechanical axes. Three if you want to get pedantic about it, with one being displaced laterally for the radiohumeral joint and the other one a bit more medial for the ulnohumeral. Otherwise we can couple these two together and say there's one mechanical axis below. So this represents a bone, and it's a concept for modeling osteokinematics. And that's all. That's really all it is. So let's have a look, see how it works and how it can help us understand both osteokinematics and arthrokinematics a little bit better. So let's see the mechanical axis in action at the shoulder. So to restate, the axis runs through the neck of the humerus. Three pictures, left to right, is anterior, lateral, and from the top. So if you look at the left diagram, what you can see is the axis of motion displacing. So it's basically in neutral position. This axis is pointing upwards and laterally. And during abduction, the axis displaces and rotates downwards at the front and upwards at the back. So we end up with abduction of the arm. What you can see is the abduction is associated with an inferior glide of the humeral head. With the side view, you're looking directly at the axis. So there's no line, just that red dot. And you can see the arrow spinning around the red dot. And in this case, the osteokinematic axis of motion and the osteokinematic mechanical axis coincide. So as the mechanical axis is also the axis of rotation, it doesn't displace, movement occurs around it, and you see true flexion and extension. Now this is flexion and extension, not elevation and depression. They're not doing that. It's this diagonal movement, if you like. It's a P&F pattern, but it's across the body and out from the body when you go backwards, what you might call scapular, although God knows why that term is used. This is flexion extension. It's both an osteokinematic spin and an arthrokinematic spin. On the right hand diagram, you're looking down on the humerus, and again you can see the axis displacing. So it goes down at the back and up at the front, and we're seeing lateral rotation there, and it's an anterior glide. So this is the way the mechanical axis is modeled in movements of the bone. It takes away the more complex parts of the bone. So you only have to picture the one line. Okay, close pack, loose pack, and least pack. These are descriptions of particular positions of the joint and how it affects the ligaments and the intra-articular structures. So we'll start with close pack. This is a particular position of maximum stability for that joint. It's a position where there is least distractibility of the joint ends, where the ligaments are maximally taut, where the transarticular pressure is lowest because the congruency of the joint surface is at its highest. So as pressure is the amount of force over a particular area, because these are so congruent, the area is larger, so the amount of force is less. So these are positions of support, basically. For the knee, it's extension. For the ankle, it's dorsiflexion, weight bearing dorsiflexion. For the shoulder, it's lateral rotation there, where you need these stability positions, in this case for throwing, for the others for walking and so on. So this is a position of maximum stability. It's used in articular stability testing, and it's often the position you put it in when you're stress testing specific ligaments. For example, the medial and lateral collateral ligaments of the knee are mostly tests with the knee in full extension. But not always. Closed back position doesn't tighten up all the ligaments, just the major ones. The least pack position is the exact opposite of this. This is where there is least tautness of the ligaments, maximal articular, transarticular pressure if it's a weight-bearing joint, least congruency in the joint surfaces, and the maximum looseness of the joint capsule. So closed pack minimizes the volume, like because of the amount of compression and congruency going on, there's least volume in the joint, and least pack maximizes the volume of the joint. So what you see is that with the least pack position, if the joint is swollen, it will tend to go in that position to accommodate the swelling. The loose pack position is a position that is neither of those two. So most positions of the joint are in the loose pack position. With close pack and least pack, probably less commonly so. In fact, I know less commonly than the loose pack. But the close pack and least pack positions tend to be at the ends of the functional movements of the joint. As I say, if you're pushing something this way, you have your arm outstretched, so the wrist is fully extended, close packed, the elbow is fully extended and somewhat pronated, mostly close packed for most of the elbow, and so on. So these are the position of maximum stability. Right. This diagram depicts ligamentous instability. So we've got an overstretched ligament, a torn ligament, but at least a grade 2, possibly a grade 3. So what you'll see with this is that if you put the tension on the ligament and then stress it, then you'll find that the ligament gives you abnormal results. So if it's a grade 2 or more, you're going to get movement. The ligament is slack, torn completely, but you're going to get movement as you take up that slack, or maybe not have another restraint come in to stop the movement of the joint. But you're going to get instability. You're going to get movement where none should exist. This is basically the maximum result of a positive result of stress testing is movement where none should exist. So the mantra is you tighten it, tauten it, and then stress it. So one movement will tighten it up, the next movement put it on taut, and then you can stress it. In one direction, in the direction that stresses the ligament, in the other directions, then you'll get a normal response to your stress test. So it's generally a unidirectional instability. If you've got a very wide ligament, then you may get a bidirectional. Well, it's not really bidirectional, it's in the same direction. For example, if this is the medial collateral ligament of the knee, it'll be a valgus instability. But whether it's valgus with straight or with the knee slightly bent will depend on which part of the ligament's torn, as well as the extent of the ligament, obviously. So this is a ligamentous instability. It's what we're all familiar with. There shouldn't be any real confusion with this. Now, articular instability can occur either in conjunction with ligamentous instability, but more likely on its own. This is a result of degeneration of the articular surfaces. So these degenerate, they get thinner, the two surfaces come closer together, and they slacken the ligaments and the capsule off. To a point where this can be appreciated when you test it. Now, if you do these tests as stress tests, for example, then what will happen is as I basically stress it in one direction, you'll get movement occurring until that ligament is tightened up, and then the movement will stop. So you'll have instability, but the end fill, because the ligament is as thick as it should be, the end fill will feel normal. And you'll get that result in one or more directions. Generally speaking, these are multi-directional, or if there's uniform degeneration of the articular surface, then it can be omnidirectional. It's unusual for it to be unidirectional, so it's either going to be bidirectional or more directions at a loss. Now, this is where the idea of close packing also comes into this. If I put the joint into a close pack position, all the ligaments are tightened up. So now I shouldn't get any movement on this. So if I've got this as tight as I can get it with close packing, and I can still get these movements occurring, then you've got an instability present, because there should be no movement at all in those positions. So this is very much an all or nothing test. In addition, if I really tighten everything up in the close pack, I should not be able to distract those joint surfaces. With an articular instability, you can still pull the surfaces apart simply because you can't get these ligaments as tight as you possibly can, because you cannot get maximum congruency of the joint surfaces. So this is one of the values of close packing, is being able to test the articular stability of the joint. Conjunct and adjunct rotations. Conjunct rotations occur because of the shape of the joint surface. It's not a volitional movement. You don't intend doing it. It just occurs because of movement over a curved surface. The next video I'm going to show you will be me demonstrating Codman's paradox, which shows these rotations perfectly, actually. Now, you can also certainly do the Codman's paradox with this, but if you look at my hand, if I can get this in the right camera shot there, if I start with my thumb adducted and then abduct, do it yourself because you can see it better, you'll see that the thumb rotates towards the palm of the hand, that is, opposes. Now, there's nothing you can do about that. It occurs. If you want to get full range movement, it occurs. Most conjunct rotations occur near the end of the range, but not all of them. The elbow doesn't. This movement occurs almost throughout the range. So most of these occur at end of range, which means that if you're going to mobilize a joint at the end of range, you must make sure that you put that conjunct rotation on and mobilize the joint with that conjunct rotation on. Otherwise, the joint surface is going to block you from getting more movement on it. So, and if you do manage to stretch the capsule these modes, which is debatable, you're going to stretch it abnormally. It won't be in the appropriate pattern for that joint. So conjunctive rotation is important for you to understand, because it is actually what produces the end part of close packing in all joints. So it's a huge deal in stability, but also when you're trying to mobilize a joint. Adjunct rotation is what you add on to the movement. So if I flex my arm, for example, and then do medial rotation, that medial rotation is added onto it. If I simply do flexion, there is no conjunct rotation until I want to go past that point, and then it has to laterally rotate to give me more movement. But I've moved out of pure flexion into impure swing of flexion with the lateral rotation added. So it's conjunct and adjunct rotation. Okay, so this is Codman's paradox. Shows how the bone rotates when it's moving over a curved surface. You start with your arms by your sides, and you can do it along with this because it's quite a useful exercise. Put your arms by your sides with your hands, your palms on your legs. You then elevate to 90, bring them out laterally, and then bring them back into your sides. And what you'll see now is my palms are facing forward. Now, I never did this. This is part of the conjunct rotation of the shoulder. Now, watch what happens. I'll try it again. So it's up, out, and I'm done. So I can't do this again because the joint capsule's tightened up. The only way I can get down there is to turn my arms over. Whereas if I just started in that position there, I can still bring my arms down. But those rotations there are tightening the capsule up. So by the time I get here, that capsule is about as tight as it's going to get. It's near enough to close pack position. And then I can not do it again, basically. Codman's paradox.